Okay, so we're live, folks, and welcome to today's Horse Conscious webinar. And I'm delighted to welcome back Sandra Walling, who will be talking on the subject of conscious horsemanship. Excuse me. I've had a few too many glue vines already. It's 7 o'clock in the evening here. Big excuse. All right, so let me just introduce you to Sandra. If you see me glancing away from the camera, it's because I'm glancing down at the controls here beneath me. So, Sandra, you're live.
Ah, hello. Hi, everybody from Vancouver, Canada, where it's not raining today. It's very exciting.
But it's nice and light because you're many hours behind us and we're already dark this end. So you did this webinar, well, this workshop already once in Australia, is that right?
Did it 3 times in Australia and once here in Canada earlier this year.
Okay, but this is all new, right? Sort of fairly new.
Yeah, it's been bubbling up and formulating for the last couple of years, coming together. The pieces have been coming together, but this year was the first time where I shared it live with other people who are coming to the class to learn what I'm calling conscious horsemanship, or in more acronym type language, EABC, which stands for Equine Assisted Belief Change.
So I'm going to leave the so just try and give us a little bit of background as to the elements that came into it, because obviously for those of the people watching who don't know your background, maybe you can just go a little over that and a little over your horse side, and therefore how the two have come together to create this new concept.
Sure. Well, my background is in science, education, and psychology outside of the horse world. And I was a classroom teacher and school counselor for 22 years. I've been a psychotherapist since 1996. So those 3 pillars have been really important to me. But what wraps them all together has been the horses. And the horses always bring me to the next level. When I'm meant to learn the next thing, it always seems to come through the horses, whether it's in a gentle, easy lesson or sometimes in a very profoundly traumatic lesson, as in the case of my riding accident a few years ago. I've learned amazing, amazing things. And as I learn, because I'm a teacher at heart, I really want to learn that well enough so that I can share it and teach it as well. So I'll actually talk about this a little bit more once we start the PowerPoint, because I'll show the picture of Chiron, the horse who really brought all this conscious horsemanship to a head, so to speak. But a couple of years ago, Chiron got colic. And he's been a really healthy horse his entire life, so it really confused me. And he got colic very, very seriously. And the vet was coming out for, well, at least every day. And I was doing all the things that I had in my toolbox, and nothing seemed to be working. And I was very worried and very stressed. We were out keeping him up for 4 days, walking with him, standing vigil beside him. Nothing seemed to be helping. And one afternoon, on the 4th day, when I was sitting out there with him, I realized that my stomach was in a tight knot with something that had been going on inside of our family environment here, something that was causing me a lot of stress and traumatizing in a way. And so then I used the tools that I have been teaching other people for years, this belief change process, to transform the trauma of what was going on in my life. And as I did so, and it just takes a few minutes very oftentimes, my tummy started to relax. And instantaneously, as soon as my tummy relaxed, Chiron farted, which is always a beautiful sound to those of us who have horses in our lives when they're going through colic. And then he pooped, and then he went, as Linda talks about, he went back to grazing. So he started to eat for the first time in 4 days. And it was like I was hit over the head by a 2x4. The light bulb went on for me. And I realized that what was going on in my environment, or directly in my physiology or my emotionality, was directly affecting my horses, or could directly affect my horses. In this case, it was just Chiron. But what it teaches us is this affect contagion that we're all so familiar with now. Those of us that work in the world of horses, we know that emotion is contagious, and those of us that work in environments with other people in general know that we are strongly affected by what goes on with other people when they come into our space, into the office, into our homes, etc. So this idea of the information that travels between us And we can think of that as sociosensual awareness. We can think of that as quantum reality. I can think of that as the collective unconscious. So there's information in the field, in the space between living beings and between every form of life and non-life on the planet. So this idea of, Rupert Sheldrake talks about it in terms of the morphic field. So there's information there. And Lynn McTaggart talks about it in her book called The Field, how we can literally affect things even at a distance. And this comes into this real great experiment that they've been doing on the International Space Station around quantum entanglement. And in another conversation, we'll have to talk about my hypothesis around pre-entanglement, but that'll be for another call. So this idea that we are intimately connected, we are all one, and we're all sharing each other, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, was in my face brought up to me with this reality about what was going on with Chiron, and how when I changed my current reality around how I was handling the stress in my life, it immediately printed out in his life. So I thought, okay, this is great on the micro level here at my home with my own horses. But in my other life, I teach people how to facilitate equine guided development and how to bring that as a skill set into their existing practice or into a practice that they want to develop. And I thought, there's no way I can any longer not include this idea, this principle, this teaching around how we can so profoundly affect our horses. And we talk about how do we take care of our horses after EGD sessions or EFP sessions, however we want to call those. But there's something now that we can do before, so that when we show up to the barn or to the paddock or to the field, we can show up in a more balanced and grounded way, so that when the horses start to engage with us, at that point now, we're not working in the bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs anymore. They're able to take us to a much higher place. And there's much less, for want of a better word, I'm just going to say it, residue left here and with them and with us. So it's like stepping up. We now have a call to be responsible in a different way now. We need to be more conscious about our horsemanship and in our lives and our experience with horses, but also now, how do we do that? And how we do that is by learning how to identify, work with, choreograph our lives in relationship with our subconscious mind, which I believe the horses interface with all the time. So when we go out to spend time with the horses, what I see over and over again is they catalyze people's limiting beliefs, the places where they're feeling stuck, the places where they've been the most deeply wounded. And also, conversely to that, they awaken in us our greatest dreams and our most significant desires and passions. So the whole spectrum. And that's wonderful and that's great, but what do you do with it? And that's what the EABC sessions teach. So whether it's for us to learn how to be with our horses, just ourselves in a beautiful, deeper relationship, and to be able to listen to them in a different way, or whether we actually work with other people in the horse world, whether it's teaching them how to ride or teaching in the upper echelons of dressage or hunter jumper, wherever it is you're working, or whether you're in a field like me, where you're teaching people how to teach others how to get in touch with their strengths, their healing, and that would be more in the EGD field. So if you facilitate that kind of work, to me, this is one of the greatest things you can bring into your practice, because it enables you to facilitate your clients moving to a completely different level of integration of what the teachers, our horses, are sharing with us.
And this is not the first time really oh, switch back to me. This is not the first time really that you've brought your experiences, your personal experiences before, and I'm thinking specifically of the fall that you had, obviously from a horse, and then you kind of were able to integrate your own work in your recovery. So this time it was your recovery, not the horse's recovery. But it's that I don't think I know anybody else who uses the tools that they have in their own toolbox in such a direct way as you to have such great results.
the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, something like that.
That's me. No, but you know what? I find that these experiences are happening to me for a reason. And if I don't get the message and don't get the lesson, it's going to happen to me over and over again. So what I've learned through all of the different joys and bumps that I've encountered along the way is there's great lessons in them. Probably the greatest, well, I wouldn't say the, but definitely some of the greatest teachings of my life. And that riding accident for sure, you know, it took me to a place of riding between the worlds, literally, and then being able to come back from that, and instead of being lost in the pain and the brokenness of it, being like Humpty Dumpty in a way, and getting back up on the wall and putting myself back together again. And sometimes the pieces go back perfectly and fit seamlessly. And these belief change processes help us do that. And sometimes, you know, there's little fragments still missing. And that's what these belief change processes help us as well. Rumi says that the wound is the place where the light, capital L, the light enters us. And, you know, there's no accident that my business name is Chiron's Way. Chiron is the wounded healer. So be careful what you name your business, because there's some propheticness around, I think, what happens as a result of this umbrella that I put over myself. And my practice does predominantly help people find the gifts in the places where they are stuck, or where they've been wounded, or have a sense of anguish or loss, whether it's people that are coming that are completely accomplished in their lives, or whether it's people that are coming that are really truly at a stuck place in their lives. What tends to prevent people from moving forward with any goal often comes down to being stuck somewhere in a place that they don't necessarily have the conscious awareness of how to get out of. And conscious awareness is 1 to 3%. Makes up 1 to 3% of our consciousness. So it's no wonder that if we're only using that small piece, it's almost impossible for us to be able to navigate intellectually what we need to do or how we need to move forward. And again, this comes back to why we need to befriend and make allies and companion with the subconscious, which, thanks to Freud, is so often thought of as this deep, dark, scary place. But really, as we'll see in the PowerPoint, it's just a tape recorder. It just documents everything we've ever experienced in our lives. It's not malevolent or benevolent. It's just a data receptacle. So when we learn how to work with it and work with it to have better effect, we can certainly enhance our own lives. And as a result, and conscious horsemanship level 1 is about how do we take accountability and responsibility for who we are and how we show up to the horses. And as we saw in the case with Chiron, that helped him physically, directly, physically. And then the second level is learning about how can we actually, through this quantum link up, how can we actually engage with the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious of our horses, or really any animal, any other human being. We can work with people at a distance. And again, you know, the idea of even talking about this is something I never thought I'd be talking about. This is something I've learned in the last 7 or 8 years or so. And when I first discovered it, I thought, oh yeah, no, how can that possibly work? And then along comes the riding accident, and it's boom, you better go into this deep, girl, and figure it all out, because this is what I actually use to heal my body, to heal my spirit, and to heal Chiron, because Chiron wasn't hurt physically, but emotionally and mentally and spiritually, he was as traumatized by that accident as I was. And to be able to reclaim our relationship, when he first came back, I was afraid to go out and be with him. Every time I thought about being with him, my stomach would start to flutter, and I'd feel nervous, and every little noise out there I'd spook at. And he did exactly the same thing. So once I healed my body, then I started to heal my heart. And then I used this process through this quantum connection to help Chiron transform the trauma of the event that he went through. And after that, our relationship is so is so beautiful and so fun, as it was before, but at a completely different level.
Mm-hmm. And it was he that had the colic, yes?
It is.
Yeah. And that they related the what you went through, what he went through, and then the colic. Is that all related?
Well, I would have to say yes, because
I thought so, but
they're related. So for sure. And I think he's probably, of all of the horses I share my life with, he's probably the most sensitive and attuned to me. Grace will come and kick my ass, literally. She'll say, smarten up, wake up, get with the program, come back when you're ready. She just holds herself in a much more grounded, powerful way. Chiron is more, I think, influenceable. He's always been super, super sensitive, even to people that come to the property, even when we're not even when he's necessarily working with them, but even just when we're having family and friends over to the house. He's more affected by what comes here than the other horses are. So I think on some level, our lives are definitely deeply entwined. And when I first met him, when he was just a baby, I was teaching in Minnesota, and at Susan Elliott's beautiful ranch there. And they walked by this little black horse, and I went up to him, and this was the day before the class started, and I just started to cry. And I've been around horses my entire life, and I've never met a horse and just started to cry. So he had just had surgery on his stifle, and someone called him the wounded healer. And I have had surgery on my stifle, so to speak. Actually, both of them now, because after the riding accident from him, he literally completely severed my other stifle when I was getting trampled by him. So now I've got two re-stifled knees, so to speak, re-stifles. But there's a definite profound emotional resonance that I had with him from the moment that I met him. And it did not make sense for me to have this horse in my life, because as much as I'm used to riding all kinds of horses, they've already been brought to the point of being ridden. I've never raised a young horse to maturity, to be my mountain horse, so to speak. So everything said, this is not the right horse for you for the purposes of what you want horses for. But little did I know, he was the perfect horse for me, for what I needed to learn and transform and now bring forth into the world. I don't think another horse would have been able to do that for me. So
yes,
he's a great teacher.
So you wouldn't have got to where you are and now doing what you're doing without him. So
I doubt it. Although if we believe in destiny, then something else would have come along the way to get me to that point. But I think it happened in such an abrupt, traumatic, terrifying way, because sometimes I and we miss those subtle messages. So the little messages that float by us on the wind, or butterfly lands on our shoulder, it's like, oh, isn't that lovely? As opposed to getting the bonk on the head or getting kicked in the pants, like has happened to me in the past. So
okay, so we have your presentation coming up, so if you want to get ready for that. Yeah. And I just want to I'm going to be on camera at this moment, just so give you time to prepare at your end. How do you want to do Q&A? You want to leave those to the end? So if people want to ask a question, they can put that into the chat box on the page, and then you get to them at the end. Is that right?
That would be great.
Yeah, and what about me? Do you want me to butt in on your presentation, or shall I shut the heck up?
Butt out.
Oh, all right then. Oh, fair enough.
No, you can absolutely butt in whenever you have a question, for sure, Mark. And then we take people. You're going to see people's questions coming in, so you'll collate them for us at the end. Is that?
Yeah. So if you see, I know you can see me during the presentation. If you see me looking away, then that's what I'm doing rather than ignoring you. So I am listening. Hence the kind of white type of rather fetching earrings I've got going on here. They're not earrings. Yes, that's the headset. Okay. All right. So I can see your presentation. So if you're ready to go, I'll switch the camera over. And as I say, just before I do that, if people would like to ask questions, there should be a Q&A box right underneath. There is. So if you'd like to put your questions in there, and then it will refresh, the page will refresh, and I will get them collecting at this end, and then I'll transfer them to Sandra at the end. So if you're ready, I shall transfer you back to Sandra. We can see your presentation, Sandra, so take it away.
Wonderful. So as any, good teacher, we always have to start with a title page. So here we go. I didn't know if we'd be having a space holder there or not. So for me, as Mark and I just talked about, where it all began was here at Kyron's Way. And this is important because I believe that it's not just the horses, but also the land here that my family and I get to steward and live on. It's a very, very beautiful, sacred spot. In fact, actually, just this past weekend, we had a beautiful Cree night lodge ceremony here. So it just seems to me that the most incredible, amazing people come and feel called to come here, and also amazing and incredible teachers, horses absolutely among them. So this is a picture, actually when Kyron was young. You can see how tall and skinny and he was back then, and he was black. And he is now a beautiful dapple gray, getting whiter and whiter with each year. So I'll just turn the slide here now. That was strange. And here's three of the beauties that I get to live with. And Grace, you can see her here on the left. She's coming out of the mist, and that's absolutely representative of who she is. She's kind of an ethereal teacher. I call her the equine apothecary. So she has this ability to meet people exactly where they're at and take them to the most deep and profound learning experiences, but also she will completely ignore you if that's exactly what's meant to happen. So some people don't even notice Grace when they come to the property. It's like she disappears in a way. And so I thought this picture was a beautiful representation of how she can bring herself forward and present herself almost in this larger than life magical way, or she can completely disappear into the mist. So for me, everything almost begins and ends with this mare, because she's just been a savior and a friend and one of the most amazing teachers I've ever been able to be blessed by learning from. This beautiful eye up in the corner belongs to Tank. And no, I did not name Tank. That's the name that he came with. But he is rock solid, steadfast. This is the horse that 3 weeks after I had my riding accident on Kyron, where my pelvis was fractured, my knees, my ligaments were severed, I lost a large part of my hearing, I had contusions all over my body, you name it, crush, crush, crush. He carried me so graciously and tenderly on the Sacred Ride, which is a program, a beautiful retreat that I used to do with my friend Ainsley. And Tank brought me down the mountain, just taking a couple of steps at a time, and then he would stop without me asking him to. I was literally just holding onto the saddle so that it wouldn't be as painful. And he would almost know, well, not almost, he knew when my body couldn't take anymore. And he would stop, literally balancing himself precariously on this mountainside so that he would be straight, or his back at least would be straight, so that I could get comfortable again before he would start off and take a few more steps. It took us about half an hour to get down what normally would take us about 5 minutes. And all the other ladies were down at the bottom, not a dry eye as they watched this. I call him an angel in a horse suit, bring me safely to ground, so to speak. And then Xenophon is in the bottom right. He is the most recent addition, and this is down on the bottom part of our property where we have lots of beautiful, amazing grass and mountainy, foresty places for the horses to be running and exploring. And Greg wanted to call him Hank. He wanted to name the horse that we came. His name was Nike when he first came, and Dancer, he'd had a number of different homes. And when he stepped off the trailer, the ground literally shook when he touched ground. And I heard the name Xenophon in my head. So I asked him if that's what he wanted to be called. And he turned his head and looked at me. So he is named after the original ancient Greek horse whisperer, and is a very, very incredible feature as well.
Just a bit of housekeeping before you move on to the next slide. People are saying the pictures aren't sharp. What I suggest you do, folks, I don't know how much it'll reset itself, but if you just refresh the page, that might help. It depends what else you might have open on your computer too. If you've got a lot of other things open, then it might slow it down, because obviously this is a live presentation. As for making the presentation larger, we are kind of restricted by this, but what you can do generally on most computers is if you do Command or Control and then hit the plus button, that will often make what you're looking at bigger. So in other words, you can enlarge what you're seeing and sort of fade out to the sides, as it were, the side, what's around it, and then it'll zoom in on what's in the middle. So that should help you. As I say, when you do refresh the page, though, it might sort of set itself back a wee while, but don't worry, we'll still get your questions and you won't miss the presentation. Sorry about that, Sandra, over to you. Carry on.
Thank you for that. And Mark, is there any way that I can do anything to help on my end?
No, you're good. You just carry on. You're doing a great job.
All right, thank you. So here is Chiron, and we essentially talked about this, what I have written on the slide already, but what I wanted to show you is this image. This image was taken moments after I did the balancing within my own for my own tummy, and then Chiron went back to grazing. So you can see he literally went back to grazing, but look at the amazing light in this picture. And some people would say, you know, there's definitely some involvement here in some people would call those little orbs. And Chiron, a lot of times when I take pictures of him, he has this green bubble in the photos, and with Grace, she has a blue bubble in hers. So I don't know what it all is. I mean, you can make your own interpretations. I like to believe in magic, so I think it's going to be something magical in terms of that he has this new renewed health and vitality coming back, and these are just an indication of us being on the right track. So conscious horsemanship was literally born out of this day, out of these experiences, although it was a synthesis of all the things that I had been learning and studying and using and experiencing, well, I guess realistically for my entire life. This is when it started to make sense and how I would start to put together to bring it forward. So the first, as we said earlier, the first conscious horsemanship classes took place this year in April down in Australia, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and then also here in Vancouver at Chiron's Way. If you can see the next slide, there's Grace with her little blue dot in the photo. But then you'll see a beautiful picture of Tank and Grace sort of there in the background with three lovely ladies that came to the Art of Equus program and Dancing with Equus this year, in which I include conscious horsemanship. And one of the questions that we were talking about and is paramount is to, now that we have an understanding that we are all intimately connected and we can affect each other either in close proximity or at a great distance, we need to now ask ourselves, what is our responsibility to our horses and in fact to our students and or our clients? Okay. For me, what I think in particular about the field that I'm in, where I bring people out to be in the company of horses to help transform relationships, goals, grief and loss, anything on that spectrum, because I am making the invitation for this to happen here where I live at my home, I have a responsibility as well to, for sure, my horses and also to my family and to my clients and to myself and to my students. So now that I've learned this, it just seems like I can no longer be quiet about sharing it or talking about it. And sometimes it might sound a little bit, I hope it doesn't, but it might sound like I'm being a little abrupt. But when I say we have to now step into a greater sense of accountability and responsibility for what's going on in our horses' lives. It's true, because we are making the invitation for people to come out and have these experiences. Now, I always work with my horses at Liberty, so they have always great choice in who they want to work with and how much they want to engage. It's a very, very wonderful, honoring experience. It tends to be a beautiful co-creation. And always the horses here are honored as sentient beings. And really, Grace taught me this a long time ago, that sometimes I'm kind of just an interpreter. Grace is doing the work. She's the one who says, okay, just stand back and watch how it's done, little girl. And so I stand back and I watch the most powerful and amazing sessions unfold. But had I dictated and said, this is going to happen, you're for sure going to do this, and you're going to work with this client, you're going to do that now, I don't think the same magic would unfold. So when the horses have a choice and are able to come to the situation, to the person, to the lesson, as the teacher, it seems to take the experiences for the clients and for the horses to a completely different level. One of the things I teach about in my apprenticeship programs is care for the horses. So before sessions or workshops, during sessions and workshops, and after sessions and workshops. And what I find is being able to use these belief change processes, there's not as much heaviness let go of per se, and if it is, it's let go of in a completely transformational way. So there's not leftovers, and the horses they seem to have way more energy. They're way more vital. They're way more engaged. They're way more playful. They show up instead of having to have naps when people arrive. They tend to show up really bright and bushy-tailed, so to speak. And what I've learned from Kyron and how he interfaced with me during that very sad day of the sad days of the colic, was now that I know this, I can't pretend that I don't. So I can't be unconscious about this awareness any longer. And what I've discovered is, for many, many years, what I would notice is the horses would be, especially in reflective types of sessions, they would be bringing up for people exactly what needed to be transformed or to be worked with. And now with the belief change process, you can insert a little EABC in any kind of reflective session or active session or riding lesson. So whenever you're working with a client or a student and they bump into some sort of wall or some place where they get a little bit stuck or sticky, you can stop right then and there. And it literally just takes a couple of minutes. You talk with them about what's going on, where are they stuck, what's the impasse, and then you have a very quick coaching dialogue or counseling type dialogue. You're able to then, in the moment, help them transform the limitation, usually very completely. Sometimes one step will lead to another, but it's amazing to watch how after just a few minutes, the stuckness dissolves, and the horses are able to move forward in a completely different way. So sometimes it might even be about, you're working with a particular horse that's not picking up the lead correctly. Very rarely is that about the horse. Yes, there can be a physical limitation for sure. And then you're going to want to call someone like my friend Ainsley to come and work on your horse, but work with your horse, pardon me. But oftentimes when we make the transformation within ourselves, it's us that is not picking up the right lead in one way or another. And when we make that correction, we're going to be able to then balance that within ourselves, and the horse suddenly able to engage with their movement at a completely different level. And I'll talk actually a little bit later on when I talk about some of the testimonials from the classes, particularly in Australia. One of the ladies who was having difficulty with trailer loading, I'll share her story with you after she learned how to transform her own beliefs around that.
So that, can I just butt in there?
Sure.
You said I could.
Yeah.
So does that mean that what sort of, I know it's difficult to answer, but what sort of percentage of horse issues, we know they're mostly related to the way that the person is handling the horse, but is it, what sort of percentage of it is not just the handling, but also the subconscious issues that the person has? Did you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, Mark, but I would have to say
in your experience, sort of thing.
It's huge. Because what's happening is when we change our beliefs about what's possible, or when we change our beliefs about our relationship with our horse and bring it into a whole-brained, wholehearted, balanced perspective, when we understand at a or understand consciously, but then make sure there's no subconscious resistance to, like, for example, coming back to Chiron, he was completely stressed when I was out there, and so was I after our riding accident. I did not do natural horsemanship with him. I did not put him in the round pen and establish leadership with him. I didn't follow any of what many people would tend to think of. Well, you have to, regain the trust of that horse by working with them and showing them that you're the better leader. None of that was what was working. What had to work was, first of all, for me to balance for trusting and feeling safe with him again. To balance for him that he felt safe and that he could trust me again. And the most significant part was to transform, so to go back in time, so to speak, and transform the trauma of the event from my perspective and from his perspective. Because we can't move forward. People think, oh, put on a happy face, stiff upper lip and all that. That's fine and dandy, but nothing's changed where it needs to change, which is in the subconscious printout in our physiology. So Candace Pert talks about our body as being our subconscious mind. We know that's true. The subconscious mind controls all the motor functions of the body, our respiration, our breathing, our digestion. All of that is controlled without us, quote unquote, thinking about it. So I can pretend that I'm not nervous or feeling unsafe when I'm out with Chiron, but guess what? Horses call bullshit on that really, really quickly. They know when our insides don't match our outsides, and children are really good at this too. And when I work with kids, that's how I talk about congruence, incongruence, authenticity. We talk about insides matching outsides. So the horses are, he would not have enjoyed it if I would have gone out there and pretended that I felt comfortable, when really at the heart of the matter, I was still terrified and re-traumatized every time I saw him. That accident would replay out in my body. And it feels like it's happening again because the subconscious mind only experiences the world in present time. So if you're remembering something that happened that was stressful, so let's say you're bringing your horse through the gate to move from one area of the farm to the other, and he rushes through it and pins you against the fence and you get hurt, and the horse gets scared and flighty and takes off. So the next time you come to the fence to do that again, no matter, get back on the horse, they say, well, that's using your conscious mind to do that. You're getting back on the horse, you're opening the gate, you're doing it over and over and over again. And maybe after 50, 60 times you do that, you regain feeling safe. But for the most part, most people don't. There's still that memory in the body, in the subconscious mind, of being blown by through the gate. So what this process enables us to do is to go back to the point of contact, so to speak, and literally within minutes, transform the stress in the subconscious mind so that you can create and play a new program, so to speak. And it gives you a clean slate from which to build now a new way, a new relationship of moving through the gate. So I think this, for me, this is one of the most significant parts of learning conscious horsemanship, is it really enables us, because gosh, I hardly know any people that live and work with horses that haven't been injured in some form or another, to transform that original experience. And again, it just is so profoundly honoring and efficient. This is a process that I've worked with veterans. I've worked with a gentleman who was in his 80s, who was a Vietnam veteran, a Korean War veteran, who was a sniper in the war and was diagnosed with prostate cancer and came out to work with me. And what we ended up working with was transforming all of the guilt and the trauma that he was feeling as a result of being a sniper and what he had to do during the war. A week later, he went back for further tests and his PSA levels were normal. So when we transform the trauma or the stress that's living in the body, the top 200 diseases in the world are contributed to and manifested by through stress. So if we can manage that stress, not only does it help us in our well-being, but then the horses aren't carrying that either. A long roundabout answer to say that really we can so directly impact our horses' well-being and their ability and their performance and all of that by what we bring to the table. And it has nothing to do with the direct training. That's still going to be part of it, but the most significant part, I believe, is who you are when you come to that relationship. And that's something we can all learn, but it's something that is very often programmed. We know, we'll talk about this actually in our next slide. I'm going to just come down to that. So why is it so important that we learn how to work with our subconscious? Well, for all the reasons that I was just mentioning. But here, my beloved Dr. Bruce Lipton, my dear friend, here's a direct quote from him. He says, "Our thoughts and behaviors are mainly controlled by our subconscious, which is largely formed by the age of 6. So this is what I was just going to share. Our beliefs about being able to have control in our lives, to be healthy and vibrant, and to be effective leaders and communicators, and all of those things are largely influenced by the time that we're 6. So our prefrontal cortex is not developed until that time. And because of this, we are literally sponges to everything that happens in our environments, in our lives, in our communities, in our learning, etc. And this foundation really does lay a foundation for how we move and grow forward in our lives. So if we grew up on a ranch and horses were treated in a particular way, and it might not have felt good to us that they were treated that way, and yet on some level there's going to be programs that are laid down within us, in our subconscious mind, that institute value around how horses are and who horses are and what horses are. That no matter where we move forward in our lives, there's still going to be those tapes or those programs that exist. And it might be part of the reason why we get stuck in certain relationships with horses, is we find ourselves defaulting back to old programs or old tapes, even though we know those aren't the ones that we hold true in the value of our heart. So it's kind of like, when we get older and we have our own children, and we say something and we sound exactly like our mom, and we go, oh my God, where did that come from? I promised I'd never talk to my kids the way my mom talked to me, or blah, blah, blah. And then there it is. And it's there because it's part of the subconscious program. And the default often comes out when we're under stress. And horses, as beautiful and amazing and as incredible as they are also stress catalysts in places like moving them into trailering them, or moving them from one place to another. I will say very quickly that Mel Fleming, when I was down at Alchemy Place earlier this year, she would bring her horses in for feeding, and the horses, this whole big herd of horses, would come down and they would very respectfully and calmly each move amongst themselves, find their own stall or paddock where they were being given their grain. They weren't running over people and helpers. They weren't running over each other. It was absolutely beautiful to watch. So I just had to segue into that to talk a little bit about Mel, who we'll talk more about later on. But there are ways of being able to work with horses that are so honoring, not only of them, but also that take good care of us as well. So back to Bruce. By the time we're 6, we have so many of these subconscious programs laid down. It says you cannot change the subconscious mind by just thinking about it. That's why the power of positive thinking will not work for most people. The subconscious mind is like a tape player, and until you change the tape, it will not change. So whether we are consciously aware of it or not, we play subconscious tapes with our horses all the time. The question that then begs asking is, what's on your playlist? So we can look to our past relationships and experience with horses, and I would imagine that some of the songs on that playlist might be fear songs, cowboy up songs, I only have an hour to get this all done songs, unnatural, natural horsemanship songs. This is what my instructor told me to do, and I'm going to do it even though it feels wrong in my gut songs. And what will other people think if songs? I hear this from particularly women actually who have their horse boarded out at a facility where they say, oh gosh, Sandra, if I go sit with my horse, or if I just, go hang out with my horse at Liberty and sing with them or read a book or whatever it is, people are going to think I'm crazy. People are going to think I'm weird. Maybe they won't let me stay at the barn anymore. So there's all of these beliefs that we have about how we are supposed to be with horses that don't necessarily align with how our heart yearns to be with horses. The great news is, though, that we now get to decide when we have tools like these belief change psychology tools in our toolbox. You literally get to decide what you want on your playlist. And my herd here, they enjoy the following kinds of songs. So they love songs about the invitation. And I love that poem by Orion Mountain Dreamer. I actually am going to use it as the filter for the when my girls start to date. It's like if the people or the men or however it ends up being their dates that they bring home can kind of run through that filter around the invitation, I think that all will be good. And I think if we can hold that poem up as well to ourselves, can we be with horses in that kind of way? I think that would be a beautiful testament to the quality that we're bringing to the relationship. And if you don't know that poem, just Google it because it's absolutely amazing. Songs about trust, leading from the heart songs. This is one of Kyron's favorites. I tipped over the wheelbarrow, aren't I clever songs. Horse listening songs. So instead of horse whispering, for me, it's really about horse listening. And Kyron and I have this beautiful dance we play together. It's called the Can You Scratch Me Here song. And he will touch his body with his nose and want to be scratched. I'll give him a little scratch there. And then he'll touch somewhere else. I'll give him a little scratch there. And one of the songs that I think is really important when we do this kind of work or have relationships with horses or others is that there's always a choice song. So my horses always get to choose whether they want to engage and how they want to engage. And that being said, when the farrier comes, they get their feet trimmed. When the vet comes to work with their teeth, they get their teeth done. But, you'll watch the farrier, she'll put a halter on them, but she throws the rope over their back and they literally come and just practically put their feet on the hoof jack. So it's all about respect and relationship, and they get to choose. It just makes such a difference in how they show up for me, but also for other people. And then courageous conversation songs, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. And then the last song, if you're coming here to Kyron's Way, and Mark has had direct experience with this guy, the ever popular songs of the drooling mastiff, towel not included. This is Saxon, and he is very much a part of the work that we do here. And he very much insists on being included. So the songs on our playlist are not songs we're just putting on there for our horse relationships. They're songs that define relationships that we have with all beings, all creatures, everything that we share our life with, all the ideas that we have, the things we want to create. All of these are informed by the beliefs that we have or the songs that we play on our playlists.
And just for the benefit of those who don't know him, yeah, just go back to him. As you can see, he's a big fella. What is he, about 95 kilos?
217 pounds.
100
so kilos. 217.
217 pounds. So, that's pushing 100 kilos. So whichever language you speak of those two, that's big. But he is so lovable. He's got the most adorable eyes and face, and oh. Anyway, carry on. I mustn't get distracted.
No problem. He's very he causes us to be distracted very easily. And you can see he's looking back at me going, because this is during a horse workshop, and he's looking back going, are you sure that you don't want this to be a mastiff, mastiff workshop? He's really fun. Okay. So if we want to create new playlists, we need to know how to work with our subconscious mind in order to replace, oh, there's a typo, in order to replace those old worn out tapes with new and empowering soundtrack. I'm going to leave that typo. I thought I'd be pretty techie there, Mark, but when I did that, it disappeared.
I'm surprised, but there you go.
So we have an opportunity, and I love this quote by Viktor Frankl, who talks about between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. When we are able to engage with the subconscious and start to have programs that give us time to breathe and to be whole brain, so that we can access the skill sets of our left and our right hemisphere at the same time, but also the frontal cortex of our brain, our hind brain, which represents more of the instinctual, primitive reptilian parts of our reactions, our instincts, etc. So when the whole brain can be coming to the party, so to speak, it gives us this opportunity to be proactive in our responses instead of reactive. And this is why I love this quote about between stimulus and response, there's that space. And we have now an opportunity and a responsibility that before we react, we actually can be present and thoughtful and mindful and conscious about what it is that we are going to be responding or how we're going to be responding. And I just wanted to offer that up before we move on. Benefits of befriending our subconscious mind. These are just a few. There's just so many. But the important parts to just touch on here is that the subconscious mind makes up 95 to 97. Some people are even now saying 99% of our consciousness. So if you don't know how to leverage and work with that part of your consciousness, it's like leaving almost all of the parts of you that can support you in creating new, optimal, vibrant, healthy relationships and programs behind. So you just have to learn how to engage with it if you want to be able to transform limitations into great successes. It's it's a million times more powerful than our conscious mind. So to me, that's a no-brainer. It's like having, if you want to get from A to B, and you can have a little mini there pulling you along, or you could have, a Coliseum full of draft horses. You want to have the Coliseum full of draft horses pulling you in the direction that you want to go. The thing is, though, where we get stuck is, even though it's a million times more powerful, it only works if it's aligned with our conscious goals. So you can decide what you want your relationship to be with horses, or your goals to be with horses. But unless the subconscious mind is pointed in the same direction as that conscious desire, then the Clydesdales are pulling you completely in the other direction. So it's very difficult to move forward using willpower alone. And that's why it's so important that we learn how to work with the subconscious mind. Because it's so powerful, it enables us to quickly and easily create change in our lives. And one of the benefits as well is you don't have to know why you are the way you are in order to change. Back to that 6-year-old age time frame. a lot of the times things that happened or we experienced that laid down specific programs in the subconscious happened before we don't even remember what happened in that age range. So a lot of times when you go to traditional counseling, therapy, coaching, people are going to say, well, talk to me about, this time in your life or when that happened. And many people don't have conscious recollection or awareness of that. And so we don't have to excavate and be an archaeologist to go dig back into the past in order to move forward into the future. And I think that's very honoring and respectful, especially when you're working with people that have had pasts that they don't necessarily want to be sharing with you as their facilitator. For there can be shame or guilt or blame attached to some of those past experiences. And I know right now I'm doing another round of work and belief change work in one of the local prisons. And I'm working with a group of men there who are serving life sentences. And I was working with a man a couple days ago, and one of the things he was sharing with me was he had a specific goal that he wanted to achieve while he was in prison. And then when we talked about what might happen as a result of that, he said, I actually don't know if I want that to happen, because then the nail that sticks out the most is the one that gets hammered the hardest. And so he grew up in an environment where if you stood out or you had any sort of success or any type of attention drawn to you, that you would literally get pounded the hardest. So when he thought about this goal, it was actually traumatizing for him to think about that based on what had happened in his past. So then we worked with that and that fear of the future, because the amazing thing with the subconscious is, because it experiences things as present time, we can go with our conscious mind backwards in time. We can experience something that's happening right now in our lives, or we can go forward in time about something we're afraid will happen, and we can take the charge out of that, and it literally frees us up to be able to move forward. We talked briefly about how the subconscious controls all the motor functions of the body. So when you change your subconscious beliefs, they print out in every area of your life, including your physiology and your biochemistry. So Kyron's story was an example of that. Soon after that as well, I developed a lump in my breast, and I used this process to literally within 7 days of when I got the call and when I went back, the lump, which was the size of a large-sized coin, like a dollar coin in the US or a toonie here in Canada, it was gone. So we can literally use this power of the subconscious mind to print out in our physiology, which is just incredible. I just talked about past, present, future fear, stress, or trauma, that it can be transformed often within minutes. It enables us to help ourselves and others to arrive at the barn in a more balanced state. And if something upsets the apple cart, so to speak, we're going to be able to quickly go back to grazing, to re-enter into homeostasis, which is the balanced state that our physiology it tends to want to be in. But stress and trauma and fear can take us out of those places. And I'm not saying, what I want to hear too is, fear is an important messenger. So I'm not saying that we're getting rid of fear before we get the message, because that wouldn't be the best way of working with that. But when fear itself is so debilitating, what this process enables us to do is get the message from fear so we can move on, move forward. Horses we talked too about this, they catalyze our limiting beliefs and awaken our greatest dreams. So now after you learn conscious horsemanship, you're going to have a way to transform any blocks that enable yourself, your clients, and your horses to move from a place of stuck to a place of stupendous. We'll be able to integrate new levels of awareness, understanding, and communication with our herd. And at the advanced levels, you're going to be able to directly support the well-being of your horses. Again, talk a little bit about that quantum connection that we can have with all living beings. Now, people will ask sometimes, well, what does an EABC session look like? And they look pretty much just like any other reflective or active kind of session. You're still going to see people there in the company of horses. You're going to still see people opening their hearts to the experiences or bumping into something that is causing them to feel stuck. The difference is in that session, within that session, you can stop at any point and do a very quick belief change process that literally just takes minutes. And actually, people might think, oh, well, that's interruptive or invasive. It's actually not. It's very smooth. It just, once you learn how to work with these processes, they're kind of just like an extension of who you are. So I know for me, I just talk this language now all the time, and the idea of working with it is just second nature. It's just part of who I am. And does it take practice to get to that point? Absolutely it does. It's like learning anything new. But the thing I love so much about it is this process can go with you anywhere. So if you're working with a student or a client and it's a horrible, miserable, rainy day and you can't be out with the horses, you can still work on their horsemanship goals in your office and transform incredibly, powerfully, so that they can, next time they're out with the horses, you'll notice a beautiful difference in their abilities to be able to engage and to move forward. Let's just click on to the next one. Here's a couple more ideas. I find that the EAB sessions can be done outside of the fence, which is also wonderful as well. So if we're working with horses that we, because of the way or the state that our client is in, it's not safe for them or the horses to be up close and engaged physically, we can work with this process at a distance, looking down at the horses, being outside of the paddock with the horses, being in the office, so to speak, or right there when you are with the horses. I like the idea of being able to do meet the herds kinds of activities before we go out and actually physically have contact with the horses, because the horses are going to start to work with us right away as soon as people start coming to the property. And people will often come with an idea of what they want to work with anyway. So you can start to lay the foundation before people interface with the horses through an EABC session and really set them up for success, but also set them up for the lessons of the horses to be able to take them to a different level, a different height, a different depth. And these pictures just show those beautiful, deep, heartfelt connections that we have with horses and being able to go to those places in their company. And then these are just a couple of shares. I'll just leave them up there while I talk for a minute. So
we can't read them, by the way, so you might want to read them out.
Oh, they're too small?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just talk. So this is one of the ladies that came to the Conscious Horsemanship workshop at Full Circle. So I was blessed to be invited to teach Conscious Horsemanship at 3 different locations when I was in Australia in April. And one was at Full Circle Ranch, which is just a little south of Sydney. And one was at my dear friend Jane's Banyanda Naturally Ranch. And then the third one was at Mel's place, at Alchemy Place, which was absolutely beautiful. And what people were saying is, so Sharon, who's the host at Full Circle, says, you know, I witnessed massive shifts in people and was gobsmacked to also personally witness a huge shift in me. And Sharon, bless her heart, is very skeptical but you know, open enough to come and have an experience, and was so delighted. And the time that we had together with her beautiful Arabian horse was absolutely transformational. And she in that session actually transformed a previous stress or trauma. And it was amazing to watch. So here's an example of how her horse had this lump on his tummy. And we went in to work with the lump to see if the message, the lump actually carried a message for her. Just like, did Chiron's colic actually carry a message for me? It did, but I was too dense to figure it out until 4 days later. So Sharon we were working with this lump, she didn't have conscious knowledge of what the lump represented. So again, one of the beautiful things of this process is we can start to engage with the epiconscious mind or the superconscious mind, that part which is above our level of consciousness as opposed to below, which is the subconscious mind, to find out if we don't know it consciously, if there is in fact a message for us in the lump. And there was, and it was very, very powerful. And I know Sharon won't mind me saying this. It's something she didn't really want to look at. She was like, I don't want to deal with that. And we ended up working with it, bless her heart and her courageous heart. And we worked with it. And I kid you not, after she did her session, she went back and felt the lump on the horse's tummy, and it had already begun to disseminate, to get smaller, to shrink. It was incredible. And that's why she said, I was gobsmacked. And so she, just beautiful. And all the ladies that came to join us there, absolutely beautiful. Another one of the ladies was having difficulty with trailering. And so actually I printed out her note here. Let me just read this little section. So she wondered if, she said, I figured if the processes could help me load my horse with the minimum stress for us both, and dare I hope, in a much shorter time, then it was truly something I could use in many areas of her life. So she had had difficulty after difficulty trying to get her horse into the trailer. It would often take over 45 minutes. They were all stressed and exhausted by the end. So the night before she went to move her horse, she said, I went through the processes, deciding the best belief statements for me were, I am a calm leader when I put my horse on the float. I am a confident leader when I put my horse on the float. And I help him get on the float and stay on so that we're both comfortable and calm. So she did these belief change processes the night before. And then the next morning she went out to bring him home. And this is from after the workshop. And one of the ladies was there to help her. And she muscle tested with her to make sure that her beliefs were in fact still strong. And they were, of course they are. Once you've locked them in, they're there, they're yours. And she said, what happened next was nothing short of miraculous. My horse loaded after a few minutes and stayed there. He went right in, and not just far enough to stretch out his neck and reach the hay. He went all the way in, and he stood still and didn't even back out or even look like he was considering it. She said, I moved the divider over, which usually causes him to back off and put his rump against the bar, which also causes him to get more excited and back out even more. The whole procedure took less than 10 minutes, and we had a happy horse and a happy leader. She said the interesting thing to finish the story was when we arrived home and we opened up the back of the trailer, he didn't even want to get out. He stood in there for a few more minutes, and then we had to ask him to back up. So here's an example of an amazing woman who took the lessons of the class and put them to use right away. She knew she was afraid of trailering. She had had not good experiences. So she took ownership herself the night before, knowing that the next day she was going to have to trailer her horse home. She did balances with herself around her own beliefs about her leadership and being calm and present during the process. Did nothing with the horse. And there you go. The horse walks on, doesn't even want to get off on the other side. So this goes back to your question earlier, Mark, about do we have to be working with the horses physically? No, we can transform our own beliefs about what's possible, and it prints out in our reality. The universe shows up for us in a different way. So those are just a couple of examples from the classes that I taught earlier this year. Very, very exciting.
And so obviously the question that crops into my mind and possibly others is that we have been talking about affecting the relationship with your horse, but what about with yourself?
Oh, well, that's where it starts.
Yeah, but I mean outside of horses, if you see what I mean.
Oh, well, the process is that, so when we learn conscious horsemanship, the first 2 days are spent in a classroom type setting where we're learning how to work with the belief change processes with ourselves and with each other, human to human. So everything that you're going to be learning there, you can take out into your private practice, you can take back into your lives with your family, etc. Because it's about learning to work with the human component first in the first 2 days. Then on the third day, we go out and we're interfacing with the horses. We're spending time in the company of the horses. And we're going to then see what it is that the horses elicit or bring up in us or challenge us about. And then we use them as our teachers or our guides or our catalysts for what it is that we need to transform. Case in point, the trailer loading example, or case in point, the lump on the horse's tummy. Really had nothing to do with the horses, had to do with the human in this example. In the second level of conscious horsemanship, we're going to spend 4 days in-house, in classroom, learning how to balance relationships, transform core beliefs, learning how to do this surrogation piece where you can connect with other people at a distance, working with your horses, other animals, etc. We'll learn how to transform fear of I'm going to just say it, death and dying, because a lot of what prevents us from living fully is our fear of getting hurt or our fear of passing away or dying. So we take the charge out of that in one of the balances that we learn. We learn how to change belief points with it using energy, and horses have belief points as well. They correlate with acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. So you're going to learn how to use this beautiful frequency for healing with your horses directly. There's more than that. I'm rattling on, but in those 4 days, we're going to learn how to work with those advanced processes with the humans. And then on the last day, on the 5th day, we're going to go out and again have advanced EAB sessions with the horses. This time, though, we are going to be doing balances directly for the horses. So going into surrogation for Chiron, for example, after the riding accident, and transforming the trauma of the experience on his behalf for him so that that's no longer printing out in his system. If you were working with this lady's horse around the trailering, if he was still not all the way comfortable, then you could go into surrogation for him and see what it was that he needed to feel safe and comfortable in the trailer and traveling in a trailer. And whether it's a physical thing or an emotional thing or a behavioral thing, cribbing, bolting, trailering, colic, you name it, once we've learned these things at the advanced level, then we can directly go in and help our horses. So level 1, how do we help the human so the horse can, we don't bring that stuff to the horse's gate, so to speak. And we see how that directly affects the horse's well-being in the examples we've talked about today. And then in the advanced level, how do we learn how to directly interface with the consciousness of horses to be able to help them either individually or collectively? So we can also work with group consciousness as well, which is quite powerful and amazing. So to be able to work with the collective consciousness of horses, to do a relationship between the collective consciousness of humanity and horses and see what the message is in that, and to bring balance to that. The possibilities are endless. And because I have such a popcorn kind of mind that goes all the time, I'm really good at helping people come up with possibilities and ideas and inspirations around what they can use the tools with once they've learned. And once people have learned, then they're free to, they're part of my herd, so to speak, from here on in. And then we have opportunities where we get together to be able to ask questions and take our learning to other levels. This coming year, in 2016, so far, I will be going back to Australia. Mel's invited me to come back and teach a level 1 and a level 2 there, and the dates are there on your screen. And then I'll be doing a level 1 and 2 here again near Vancouver. Then the year after that, I'll be going back to Australia and doing a sacred horse retreat where we'll be able to take all the things we've learned so far in the first 2 levels and apply them to working with what our sense of divinity is, essentially, and the divine nature of horses. So to be able to work with those qualities in the horses and what that is meant to bring us and teach us is really looking at the capstone now of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you look at his pyramid, we're right up at the top of self-actualization, then working within those ideas and concepts. And then in terms of Australia, just for now, I just have those dates for now. I'll likely be looking at another workshop down there as well, and then going back again the following year for a level 3, which is the Sacred Horse Retreat. Did you have a question about that?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So that sort of brings me to the end of our conscious horsemanship talk, and what we were going to do with our callers. I don't know how it'll work as well here because I can't directly talk with them, but if there's somebody that's bumping into something or has a particular experience in the past that they would like to have power over instead of it having power over them, I'd be happy to facilitate something with that person here, and we'll get started, and we'll do a little bit of work with it. And if it looks like it's going to need to take a little bit more time, then I'll be in touch with that person privately to wrap things up. And this is something that I did with Jen Oikle earlier this year when we were on the Healing with Horse Collective Symposium. And it worked really well with Jen because we were talking, we had access to each other through the audio. This will be something new to try with the Horse Conscious group because I don't have direct contact with them with their voice. So how do you think we might do that, Mark? Is that possible?
Yeah, the only thing is, because I've got a volunteer, the only challenge is that might a possible delay. So you'll know who you are when I announce you. Might be the easiest thing is to email me with your thoughts as Sandra speaks. Okay, so if this person who it's Jane, by the way, so Jane and your warm blood, so I'll explain in a second. So Jane, if you could just prepare yourself and get ready to email me either at info@horseconscious.com or mark@horseconscious.com, because I just think that will be quicker. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is that there is about a 30-second delay on the webinar. So we're 30 seconds in the future from you. So by the time you hear this, we said it 30 seconds ago. Okay, got that? All right. So all of which means that there might be a slight delay. So Sandra, you need to kind of bear that in mind too, that there'll be maybe some delay in feedback because Jane's got to type it, and then we've got to wait for the reply to come in. It's a bit like us communicating with someone on the moon. There's the time lag while it travels.
Gotcha. Okay,
so here's Jane's issue. She has a 17-hand warm blood called Polaris. Moving up to my 17-hand warm blood Polaris from formerly riding quarter horses, as it has come to my attention, I have a fear around riding such a big moving horse. This fear of mine is limiting Polaris's ability to express his movements fully and at the same time creating some strain in his lower thoracic spine. If Sandra has the opportunity during this call, I'd love her to assist me to change this limiting belief. Is that a good working example for you?
That's great. Yeah, that's great. We can work with that. And I think I know this is my beloved friend Jane. So I know Polaris, and he is a big beauty, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to... What were you going to say, Mark?
Sorry, just Jane has just replied in the chat to say, can she use it here? We shall try it, Jane. Let's just try it. And if it works, then we shall see. But there is this delay. So if Sandra and you can bear with us, then we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
So go ahead.
All right. So I'm just going to mumble here for a second. So the first thing I'm going to do is establish that it's, first of all, the thing I love so much about this process is you can't go in and mess around. You must always make sure that it is safe and appropriate for all the parties involved. So in this case, for myself, as the person that's doing the work, it needs to be safe and appropriate for me to be doing this. It also needs to be safe and appropriate for Jane that we're working together in this way now. So Mark, what are people just looking up at the picture that I have up there working with right now?
Yeah, picture of you in the stone and the Kim's painting.
Okay, perfect. So then I'll just speak a little bit as I'm working with Jane. So the first thing that I need to do is to just establish that link that I was talking about, and this enables us to work with people or animals non-locally. which is very exciting. A lot of my practice really does involve people, like exactly what's going on here with Jane. People will send me an email, ask me if I can support and help, and what I'll do is I'll do this non-local session for them, for their horses or their animals or their family or their goals or their business, whatever it happens to be. Okay, so it's safe and appropriate for Jane to work with transforming her fear about riding Polaris now. Be strong. Yes, it is. Okay, and so is Jane sitting down?
I don't know, but I guess so. So
Jane, you need to be sitting down comfortably. And what I'd like you to do is to just imagine riding Polaris and how you experience it now, what it's like for you now, that fear. And if you could please type to Mark on a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is no fear at all, you are riding free and connected and balanced, and it's the most incredible ride of your life. And 10 is you're very fearful, you're nervous, it's uncomfortable, you have all of these false self noise chatters going on in your head and in your body. You're ungrounded. Polaris is catchy in his gait. So 0 is perfectly beautiful and peaceful when you think about riding, and 10 is very uncomfortable and disturbing when you're riding. What number are you at right now when you think about getting on? Like if you were to just jump out and go for a ride with Polaris right now, what number would that be at in your body?
okay, so she just replied yes to the fact that she's sitting down, so you can tell what sort of delay that we're waiting for her message to come back from the moon. So I will relay it to you as soon as I have it.
Wonderful. So and I'll just talk then while we're waiting for that to come through.
Okay.
The reason that I like to ask people, so I'm certified in EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And I used to use that a lot with my clients because it was helpful. But now that I use this process, I've never pulled out EMDR anymore. It just doesn't touch it in the same way. It's not as complete. It's not as efficient. It's not as honoring. And but what I do pull from EMDR is I like to ask people about this number, because it's like candy for the conscious mind. The conscious mind at the end of things is going to go, I want proof that something has changed. Now,
sorry, if I just interrupt, so as you know, that's a 7.
That's a 7. Okay. So when Jane thinks about riding Polaris, the level of discomfort or dis-ease in her system is 7 out of 10. Okay. So our goal today is to bring that significantly down. So I've checked to see that it's safe and appropriate for Jane to do this, and it is. And I'm just going to find the best way to work with this is using this balance. Be strong. It is. Okay, so Jane, please cross your left ankle over your right. And please place your left wrist over your right, and then entwine your fingers. So I know Jane has taken conscious horsemanship with me, so she's going to know how to place her fingers together like this. And once you are in that posture, you're going to close your eyes, and you're going to remember riding Polaris and feeling that sense of 7 out of 10 discomfort and worry, and that he's so big, and oh my goodness, I'm used to riding quarter horses, all the things that go on in your head and in your mind and your heart and in your body. Just allow those and put them on like a video loop. So imagine the ride and feel what the feeling is, and then keep imagining it over and over again until you are able to experience that ride from a place of complete peace and non-attachment. You may feel more uncomfortable before you feel comfortable in the ride. And you just need to trust me that if you can stick with this, and it typically just takes a minute or two, you'll be able to come through the other side having discharged and rebalanced that stress, my dear. So when you're ready, close your eyes and just imagine the ride on Polaris, the rides you've had in the past, what they felt like, and just keep riding, riding, riding until you can experience that ride from a place of peace, that the charge goes out of it. And when you're there, just type to mark that you're complete. And the rest of us are just going to quietly hold space for you while you do that. And there's no rush. Just take the time that you need. Take the time it takes. It's like working with horses. We're on horse time now. So a lot of times when you're facilitating this with your partner, I'll just talk while Jane's just finishing up, you will be able to see a transformation occur in their physiology. You'll be able to see that their face changes, their posture changes. And sometimes you as the facilitator will see those changes happening right before your eyes, and sometimes also before your partner feels that the complete shift has taken place. The process usually just takes a few minutes. It takes longer, it needs to. And so we don't have a timeline on it. We just allow it to unfold at its own rate.
Okay, complete.
Okay. So Jane, you're going to put your under your wrists and your ankles, put your fingertips together with your thumb to thumb, index finger to index finger, all the way around to pinky. And this is like hitting save on your word processing document. So you've just rewritten your document around what it says about how you experience riding Polaris. So you want to save this new Word document. And you're just going to hold that there for a few more seconds. Now you can just relax. And now to post-test. So in the beginning, we pre-test, we asked Jane to get in touch with the idea of riding Polaris and get an assessment of what number of stress that's creating in her system. It was a 7. And now to post-test, my dear, if you can think again about the rides you've had on Polaris or getting back on Polaris, and just share with us what number you're at now. So 0 is you feel peaceful and content, not attached, maybe even a little looking forward to the idea of the ride, and 10 being incredibly uncomfortable and stirring you up. What number are you at now?
tears. Can you imagine a sublime ride where we are as one? I'm at one.
Oh, that's giving me goosebumps and tears. It's giving me tears because, well, I know this is my beautiful friend, and I know how important this is for her. All right, my darling. So what we're going to do there is honor that beautiful transformation. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for bringing this forward to share with us. What I'm going to check now is, in order for Jane to move all the way down to complete and full peace and non-attachment regarding her rides with Polaris, there's a belief statement to balance for now to help her do that. Be strong. No, it's just a matter of settling, allowing this to settle in over time. It is. Okay, so what Jane's going to do now then is, like, if you can imagine having a plant that you've just watered. So you just poured the water in, and sometimes the water sits at the top of the surface of the plant, and it takes a little bit of time for it to soak all the way down into the roots. Oftentimes when we're working with something like a fear, a stress, a trauma, a transformation like this, because there's been such massive change in the system, remember, this only took a couple of minutes, but we're working with something that's 1,000,000 times more powerful than the conscious mind. So big change, big transformation has occurred there. It can take a little time to soak all the way into the system. So Jane's letting us know right now she's at a 1 out of 10. I just muscle tested to make sure, to see if there was something else that we needed to do at this point. There isn't. Let me give you a scenario, though, in case there had been. So when we transform stress or trauma, what it's like is taking your foot off the brake. Okay. But unless you put your foot on the gas, sometimes you don't get all the way to where you're going to. So if someone comes down from a 10 to a 3, and I muscle test it's about time, no, it's not. It's actually that they need to do something else. Then we'll figure out what it is they need to do. And typically, it's balancing for a belief statement. So just as a teaching example, something that Jane and I might talk about is simply creating a statement around how she wants to experience her rides with Polaris. So she might write something like, you know, my rides with Polaris are peaceful, are transcendent, are safe. You know, she'll put in the descriptors that feel right for her. And then we'll go ahead and we'll make sure that the subconscious mind is whole-brained to those statements or statement. And what that does is it puts her foot on the gas. It enables her to get all the way down to that complete zero place of peace, but then takes her right through the other side and starts to bring her up the scale in terms of joy and her experiences of the ride, how she wants that to be. So then what we would do is now have Jane imagine, instead of what it has been like in the past, what we would have Jane do is imagine now her ideal ride. And that's something that I think Jane and I will work with, because this delay, I think this delay is a little bit, you know, don't have to have people sitting there waiting for 30 seconds. So Jane, I will be in touch with you, and we will lock in the new experience of the new ride and how you want that to be instead with us. And then maybe what I can do between you and I, we can send Mark a little note in the next couple of days, and he can share with the Horse Conscious community where you are and what that feels like for you now. Does that sound okay, Mark, to do it that way?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Another message from Jane: we are one in capital letters.
Yay.
So, yeah,
Well,
that would be great, because I'm sure people would appreciate the follow-up and what that really means and so forth. So,
absolutely.
So Jane, if I could ask you to maybe just have a think about, I'm not wanting to tread on Sandra's toes, but really just in terms of feedback that you could maybe provide. I'm not, you know, just maybe a couple of paragraphs of what you experienced, or Sandra, you guide us here, but I was just looking for maybe something from her end. That was all.
Yeah. And Jane, be in touch with me because I will. We can Skype or we can email, and we'll just bring this through all the way to the other side, which maybe you can reflect on that piece and share as well. This is what I did when I was working with Jen Oikel on the live call. There is we actually got the message, but it turned out there was more to the message. So she and I worked with that privately, and then she wrote about it and shared it with the community. So I think that would be a nice way for us to do that here.
Right. Super. So is there anything more to go to that, or should we just cover off a few more questions and then I can give them the link to people, because we've been going a long time.
Oh, we have. Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to move on down and quickly just let you guys know what's coming up in 2016. So we talked about conscious horsemanship going back down under. We're going to be at the beautiful Mel Fleming's place, who, if you are already in the Southern Hemisphere, you absolutely must go and spend time with Mel and work with Mel. She is truly a spiritual horsewoman, and it was an honor, a true honor to be with her. Now, the cool thing is, Mark, last time we talked, which I think was in March or April of this year, before I went to Australia, one of the people said hello from Petra up in the corner of our chat box, and I saw it and I said, oh my goodness, Petra, I've always wanted to go to Petra. And then at the end of our call, we hung up, and I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if Mark has any way of finding out who that lady was from Petra, because I'd love to be able to meet someone there and maybe travel there one day. As I was thinking about that, ping, into my inbox comes an email. Hello from Petra. So this beautiful Dutch woman who now lives in Petra, named Sandra Jelly, sent me an email and asked if I would consider coming and teaching a class in Petra. And so you'll see on your screen there that Sandra and I have now just completed our flyer for an Ancient Horse Wisdom retreat, where we're going to expand awareness and unbridle our creativity in the deserts of the beautiful and magical ancient sites near and around Petra and in the Jordanian deserts. And I've always wanted to go there. We're going to be spending time with the Bedouin people out in the Bedouin camps. We're going to be going to the Dead Sea. We're going to go into the Temple of Artemis. We're going to be spending time with the Arabian horses. We're going to have an absolutely amazing 9-day retreat and journey. So if you are at all interested in joining us, please do come. And I also share this because this speaks to how quickly, when your subconscious mind is in alignment with your conscious goals, a lot of times now I just think about something and boom, it shows up. So when you're working with that subconscious mind and befriending it and having a great time with it, it's incredible how quickly things can show up. And then also in 2016, I'll be having my Art of Equus Advanced Apprenticeship program. And within that program, I will be sharing conscious horsemanship. But my other deep passion is integrating the expressive arts with the horses, because that in and of itself speaks to the subconscious and the qualities of transforming subconscious through those expressive art forms. So if you're interested in journeying a year journey with me, let me know about that as well. Okay. So Mark, do you want to open things up to questions?
Yeah, just bear with me 2 seconds. Someone's asking for the link. They're going to be missing most of it, but
at the end, I'll pop it up.
Yeah, I just want to pass them the link to the webinar, but they'll catch the last few minutes. Right. Okay. So are you ready to go back live?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll switch to me, and then you can get yourself sorted out.
Oh, I'm sorted.
No, but technically speaking, I can see that you.
Speaking.
All right. Sandra, funnily enough, was just as you were about to talk about Petra, Sandra messaged to say, can you explain about muscle testing? But I guess if she waits till you come over, then you'll be able to demonstrate it. And that, I've lost my earring. Hang on a second. There you go. My hearing. Oh, man, it's my hearing, not my earring. All right. So can you just explain, because Jocelyn has written, do you have a book or online course to take? I would not expect to be able to go to BC or Australia. So perhaps you can explain why online courses are not totally feasible for this kind of work?
For
And I'm
this
going to switch the camera to you.
Okay. For this work in particular, it's like if you want to learn how to swim and become a great and safe swimmer, this isn't something that you pick up a book at the library and read about. So this is something that's a very experiential class. It's often taught in relatively small groups of around 20 to 30 or so. And you're going to get direct and immediate feedback on all of the different processes. And we do learn applied kinesiology or muscle testing, or biotesting is another way of saying it. But there's a very specific way that we teach it and use it in this process. And I used to try muscle testing for years and years and years before I learned this process. And I would always get really hit and miss responses, and it never really worked for me very well. So what I would encourage you to do is read a book called The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And Bruce is going to give you the science behind this process. And then if you would be in touch with me through email, maybe let me know where you are. There's also the possibility of creating a class and bringing it to your area. So that's an exciting possibility as well. Just like what's happening with Sandra in Jordan, one of the things we're talking about is after the retreat to do a belief change workshop in Amman. And that's never happened before. That's kind of mind-blowing. In 2 weeks, actually, I'll be heading to Northern Alberta to work in a First Nations community there, where I'll be teaching with Bruce Lipton. And Bruce will be teaching Friday on the science. Saturday, Sunday will be me on the psychology, and then our dear friend Tom, White Standing Buffalo, will be teaching around the spirit. So we'll be doing the science, psychology, and spirit of change. And so this template or this program can go, the first 2 days can go really attached to anything, but because for me, the horses are so important, that's where the conscious horsemanship came, as a responsibility for me to give back to the horses so that they can be happy and healthy. So I hope that answered your question.
Great, thank you for that. And then here's one from, I'll switch to me just for sake of argument, let's give you a rest. So here's one from Monday in the UK. Hi Sandra, you talked about blocks. I have this deep block inside that says, why should the horses want to be with me? How can I possibly have anything to offer them in terms of my being, my company, etc.? Despite their willingness to accept me in the herd and to come when I am doing something with them, such as asking them to move from one place to another or any other care function, when at liberty I seem to be frozen with this inner state of doubt. Can you suggest how I may transform and allow myself to be free from this, to let it become clearer or to let it go? Thank you so much for a lovely open presentation, which I am much enjoying.
Oh. Thank you in turn for your beautiful question and your feedback. You know what, my darling, just send me an email and we can work together, because what I'm hearing in the things that you're saying is that there's something that, as you're saying, is keeping you stuck and paralyzed. And around this sense of worthiness of who is, it comes back in a way to that beautiful Marianne Williamson poem, who says, who are we not to be a child of God and to be in and own our power? And the horses are there to catalyze that and that, to inspire that in us. And trust me, if you were not worthy of them being with you, they would not be coming to you. And you are telling me that they are, or you're telling us that they are. So in that humble place that it sounds like you're standing in, open your heart to accepting and receiving the love and the offerings that they're sharing. In and of that itself, that will be healing and transformational for you. If you want to take it further and to transform whatever that underlying piece is, just be in touch with me and I'd be honored to support.
Super, thank you. And finally, just a little bit of feedback from Jane, who's just saying she wants to go through the process. And of course, Jane, obviously go through and process it with Sandra and with Polaris and take your time. Get back to us when it's comfortable for you. And obviously, don't feel pressured into saying anything that you don't want to say. We just love to hear your feedback about how it's gone. And from your sort of experience and exchange with Sandra. So whatever suits you is fine by us. So switch the camera back to Sandra. Any closing thoughts before we shut down for the night? It's
I do have a
long session.
If people can indulge me for a couple of minutes, I'm going to turn the screen back to my PowerPoint, if we may, Mark.
And whilst you do that, can I just ask people whether they have seen, I've put a link in that should have appeared on your page, and I just want to check that it has a link to find out more about conscious horsemanship. So if you could just give me a feedback that you're seeing that on the webinar page, that'd be great. Okay, Sandra, up to you.
Can you see the screen now?
It's kind of pretty small. You will have to read it for us or explain it.
Okay. So this is just simply a takeaway action step for you all. It says, what is the meaningful conversation you're meant to be having with and about horses, and how do you have it? So the first thing that we need to do is stop having the one we've been having up until now. So just stop it, okay? The conversations we've been having that are no longer serving us, stop having them. Be impatient with easy explanations and rationalizations. And maybe we can put this up somewhere, Mark, after the fact in a PDF or something so people can access it, because it's a little bit of an action takeaway for them.
Sure.
Lose control of the willful part of your mind so that you can begin to see the invisible and the magical, which speaks to this, this beautiful question that we just had. The willful part of the mind that's saying we're not worthy. Who are we to have horses want to spend time with us? Put it aside so that you can see the magic and the wonder. And then bring yourself to the edge of an element that's larger than you, aka a horse. And then say yes to the invitation of the deeper journey. Okay. The journey, I love this. Again, how do we do that? I love this little piece by Antonio Machado, who talks about this when people walk the Camino de Santiago. And he says, whenever you are there and you are a pilgrim on the path, you shout, "Pathmaker, pathmaker." There is no path. And the pathmaker replies back to you, you make the path by walking. By walking, you make the path. So I'll leave that. That's my final little message to you all, is that it's up to us to create the path that we want to take with horses. And if it's a path that has never been walked before by you or by anyone in your circle or anyone around you, you make that path by walking it. And sometimes you need to invite someone along with you to take those first tender steps. And what better companion could you have than a horse? So lots of love to you all. Thank you for a beautiful and amazing session. I can't believe we went so long, but oh my, I just had a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And if you'd like to switch the camera back to you so we see your lovely smiling face before we go, that would be good. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today. I hope you did enjoy today's webinar. It was very special indeed. And thank you for staying with us and for your questions. And thank you to Jane for her participation. We really appreciated that. Some say they see the link, some say they don't. Perhaps you could just refresh the page. You will probably get reset back a few seconds, but it should be there. Maybe it's sort of an internet connection speed thing. So yeah. So one last look at Sandra's smiling face, and then we shall say goodbye. And thank you, and it's goodbye from me too. So we look forward to speaking with you next time, and there will be a replay for 48 hours if you'd like to enjoy that. So ta-ra for now, and enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you're up to. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye.